Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made this really cool modern organic type of design that featured some honeybees, some honeycombs, and some crystals. I thought this design would look really sharp using black and white as my base colors and adding gold as the accent color or accent metallic. I think it turned out really cool, so let's get right to it. First thing we're going to do is make some details, and I used some gum paste to make some bees and to make some honeycombs. I bought some molds. I found these really cool bee and honeycomb molds on Amazon. Actually, I'll try to remember to add that link in the video description. If I don't, please remind me and I will add it. I have made bees, just sculpted them before in my hands without molds, but I'm telling you, these molds make all the difference in the world. And I'm doing everything with black as my base color because I think the gold is really bright on top of black. Somebody recently asked me on the last upload actually why I painted gold over black. What I find is that black as your base color with gold tends to make the gold look brighter. If you use a white, it's a softer gold. If you use a gold or a yellow base, it's kind of a more in-your-face kind of gold. I don't know. That's just my take on it. To make those crystals, I just used black candy melts. And I bought candy melts and that were black already. But I added some Color Mill black food coloring, oil-based food coloring to it to make it a little deeper. I felt like it was not quite as jet black as I wanted it to be. To get those to set up, I just set them in the freezer until they were firm. A key about filling these deep crystal molds is to make sure that once you put your chocolate in there that you tap out the air bubbles that can get trapped down at the tips of these crystals. You can even use a piping bag to fill them by placing the tip of the piping bag way deep into the mold and pulling it up as you fill it, because that helps to prevent bubbles as well. Now I'm using this mold. I was going to use what you see a lot of people use, the packing, what's it called? It's a packing material that if used with chocolate really gives you that really cool honeycomb effect. But I knew that I was doing carving out into my cake. So I needed something that was going to be flexible. And that's why I bought that mold so I could use with fondant. Now I'm adding color to these crystals, these rock candy. Funny story is I added black to it, but I already had those flowers. I don't know if you noticed them at the beginning. They're kind of a denim blue-green color that I wanted to add on this cake. And that, when I added that black food coloring to the Everclear and mixed it in with those crystals to color them, it turned out the same color as those flowers. Now, I could have added more black to it to make them more deep of a color, but I thought, why? I mean, what are the chances of it matching so closely to the flowers I was going to add anyways? And that just added another level of, another color, another level of depth to this design. So I just stuck with it, and I just set those to the side to dry out. They're going to dry out really quick because Everclear dries very quickly. That's why I like to use it to add color to the rock candy. Now, I'm just carving out sections inside of this cake, kind of to mimic the inside of a honeycomb where the bees would live. Now this cake is an old one. This is one of my Franken cakes, so it was a little hard to carve it, and I did find myself in my own way too much. So I'm sorry you see a lot of my back. But this top tier, this was a freshly baked cake, so it was easier to carve out. When you carve out a shape like this, you are basically angling your knife, a serrated knife or sharp knife, into the center at an angle so that you get that section carved out, and then cover it with some buttercream. Now, if this had been for an order, I would have done another layer of buttercream around the cakes. Honestly, I kind of just forgot to do it since it's not for an order. It just wasn't in my mind something I needed to do. But technically, you would want to add another layer of buttercream around these cakes so that there's more buttercream with the bites. You know, you don't want it to be just this crumb coat of buttercream and then fondant. Nobody wants to eat that, just that. I like fondant, but a lot of people are not real fond of it. So make sure that you add another layer of buttercream. And I just use shortening to attach these. This mold is really cool because it has the interlocking patterns. So you get a continuous pattern on both sides of the mold. You do have the interlocking pieces, which is really cool. And I'm just cutting off the excess because I know that I'm going to add another layer of fondant on top on either side of this. And I'm going to do a kind of a marbling technique with that fondant to add a little depth of color with the white in with it. The carving technique I use on this cake is very similar to a geode cake. Basically the same thing, except for the inlaid part is the inside of the honeycomb instead of the crystals. That's probably part of the reason I wanted to add some of the rock candy to the outside edge of it, because it really reminded me of a geode cake. Now, to get this kind of layered black and white fondant, I just did mostly white with just a little bit of black. A little bit of black goes a long way when you're wanting your base color to be a different color. So don't add too much black. And I just used that piece and tore off pieces and added them on top of another strip of fondant, white fondant, with just some shortening. You can use water if you want to, but I find that shortening in general works pretty well. I just rolled it out, and then I'm cutting the piece to fit where I needed it. I kind of measured it out, how tall that section is and how far around it needs to go. And then I'm just using an X-Acto knife to cut off the extra pieces. A lot of times when I do a wrap like that, I'm calling it a wrap, but not technically a wrap. I'll put the cake upside down. I'll attach it that way so that you have that sharp, crisp corner. But this cake is a little different because you have that section carved out. So I just went ahead and lifted it up. And then on the bottom, I just added just straight black fondant. And I'm kind of trying to merge the honeycomb together with the fondant panels, but there's going to be those rock candy right where the two different patterns meet, so you're really not going to see that. And then for the top tier, I just did the entire piece together since I didn't have that piece cut out all the way around like on the bottom tier, so I could lift it up in one panel. Again, I measured the height and the circumference before I added it onto the tier. And I, again, added just shortening to get that to attach. I just mixed some Everclear with some gold luster dust, and I'm just brushing it on to the honeycomb. Because those honeycomb, if you didn't add a metallic to it, you're really not going to see it. And I think that just adds that extra touch of elegance. I really like it. Now, to put the two tiers together, you would want to put some straws in that bottom tier and a little bit of buttercream to get the top tier attached to the bottom. But since that bottom tier has been used so many, I'm retiring it after this one. Since it has been used so much, there's no way I could get straws in there because it's so dried out by now. Really appetizing, I know, but trust me, if you order a cake from us at the bakery, we're not going to do this to you. These are just for demonstration purposes. Now I'm just attaching my crystals and the all of the crystals, the chocolate ones and the rock candy, with just some piping gel. If that is not working for you, use a little bit of buttercream. That's fine too. I just didn't want to see it. So I find piping gel is kind of my glue in most cases. Now these other pieces, to add some accent with the gold without coloring the whole thing gold, to still see that pattern of the honeycomb, I'm just using my clean, dry hands, dipping it in just the gold luster dust, straight, and just luster dust, no Everclear, and just kind of brushing the surface. And it's only typically going to grab onto where you have the raised edges. And then I just attached the bees with a little bit of buttercream. and the flowers. See how well those flowers actually matched? That was just amazing to me. So anyway, I hope you liked it. I hope you got something from it. And we'll catch you on the next one.